Hello, everybody, and welcome to Pivot Point DFS presented by FanDuel on the Believe Network, part of the Old Man Squad Sports Network. I am your host, Keith Cork, and I am here to break down a really difficult Week 15 in the NFL coming up. Man, Week 15, we are about a month away from the end of the season. Time has really flown. Obviously, we will recap another successful Week 14 for us at Pivot Point DFS. Lots of swaps, lots of information coming out. I did generally stay, though, I believe, on most of the plays I gave you last Friday. But as always, we are recording this on Friday, and a lot will change by Sunday. So please make sure you do get into our Discord so we can walk you through those swaps. Always happy to share with you guys, what I'm looking at, what I'm doing. But yeah, let's get right to it. Let's talk about Week 14. And it was a successful week. I felt like, we did a pretty good job. Wasn't our closest week. Definitely a good one, though, and I'll take it. That's what I'll say at the end of the day. But yeah, Week 14, winning lineup for the SPY featured Josh Allen, who absolutely went insane. Josh Allen was kind of the skeleton key needed to unlock everything. I did not roster Josh Allen anywhere. This was a naked Josh Allen, I do believe. Yes, it was. Naked Josh Allen. Did have a T. Higgins bring back, which I also was not considering. T. Higgins also had a fantastic day. RJ Harvey and Kenneth Walker were the running backs. So Kenneth Walker was awful, under 4 points, but this still took down the SPY because all the other pieces absolutely went off. Puka Nacua went off. Michael Wilson at wide receiver went off. I mentioned T. Higgins already. Kyle Pitts, who just went off on Thursday Night Football, went off last week as well on Sunday. Colston Loveland, who was a player that I was on, was in this lineup as well. I mentioned him on the pod last week. And then the Titans defense rounded it out. 204.64, pretty low top score there. But he got it done. And very interesting that, Kenneth Walker ended up being in this lineup and absolutely crapping the bed. And, it really isn't that impressive of a lineup all around, but some of the pieces that did go off went absolutely insane. And first and foremost, it's Josh Allen, right? He went absolutely nuts last week. So I'm hoping he doesn't do it again this week, because that will ruin me in best ball. And I've already started hot with lots of Kyle Pitts. So hopefully that doesn't happen. For the screen pass, it was also Josh Allen. I don't believe he had a pairing either. So it was a naked Josh Allen yet again. The bring back for this one was Chase Brown, who was 7.3% owned, ended up putting 18.5 DK points. Josh Jacobs was the other running back. So the running backs did better in this one than the other lineup there, the other winning lineup. Michael Wilson, Christian Watson also went off. Zay Flowers also went off. And this is where, oh man, I don't like Zay Flowers. He, very boomer bust. Could not get myself to play him. You'll see why I kicked myself for that, but I did not play Zay Flowers. I had the opportunity to. Had I done it, it would have been a really good week for me, but I did not do that, unfortunately. Harold Fannin was the tight end, and this is a piece here that was also a huge leverage piece. It was only Harold Fannin was only 5.5% owned. If you recall, there was a lot of weather going on in that Tennessee-Cleveland game. Did not matter. It ended up being 31-29. We faded that game because of the weather. And unfortunately, that turned out to not be the call. High-scoring game. And Harold Fannin was very much a piece that if you want to take down a tournament, you should have been playing him. And Kyle Pitts was in this lineup as well. And then the Denver Broncos was the defense, and they had a decent enough game against the Las Vegas Raiders. So 216.64 was the total there. So even though this lineup I like a lot better on the screen pass, just if I just look at the lineups, I'm like, okay, this is clearly the better lineup. There's no Kenneth Walker busting out here. Harold Fannin at tight end had to be a huge leverage play there. But yet again, it's only a 12-point, difference in score. Exactly 12-point difference in score. So it's really not that far off from the other one. Interesting enough that both of these use double tight end, which was something I was considering, and I think I mentioned in the pod. If I didn't, I meant to, because there just was not a lot of value, right? When there's not a lot of value in the slate, double tight end makes more and more sense. So it did make sense here, and that ended up being the way to go. Here is the chalk from last week. James Cook was the top dog in the running back department. Devon Achane Josh, who left with injury, unfortunately, he was off to a really good start. Would have had probably a really good game. Things would have probably looked different had he, stayed in. I probably would have had a worse week, honestly, myself. But he ended up leaving. He still had 17.5 points. Josh Jacobs, RJ Harvey had a nice game as well. Bucky Irving, Kenneth Walker, Keenshawn Junkins, and Breece Hall. A lot of not good there. Running backs were tough this week. We'll get into that a little bit more. QBs, it was Josh Allen at the very top, and most people own him, and he absolutely went off. So that's part of the reason I didn't have a great week. I only had a good week because I did not have Josh Allen. Jacoby Brissett was, again, going to be fine. He was fine. This week's different. I'm not playing Jacoby Brissett this week. I know I haven't really played him much. I played him, I want to say like nearly a month ago when he first took over. I played him when he was, cheapest. And I kind of got off of him. He still had put up really decent weeks, but this week's going to be a really tough matchup for him. So I don't think I'm playing Jacoby Brissett this week either. Tyrod Taylor. I don't think I know I mentioned Mitchell letting people down. I don't think I mentioned Tyrod Taylor letting people down, but that was also, to me at least, something that was very much on the table, very much a risk. So unfortunately, 10.44% of you did play him. He ended up putting negative points up, 0.76, negative 0.76 points. So really a bummer there. And, if you listen to this podcast, I don't think I mentioned him as a top play at all. I might have mentioned him as chalk. I think we'll go over that in a minute here. But yeah, I was not going to play Tyrod Taylor. Just wasn't going to happen. The wide receivers, Michael Wilson was easy. Everyone had him. He went off. His price did come up. Again, it's a tough matchup this week. I'm trying not to get him in my lineups, but he still is kind of appealing just from a volume standpoint. He's still going to get double-digit targets. Luther Burden, Devon Vele, which is interesting. Jahmyr Chase, Adonai Mitchell. Told you guys. I told you. I ended up playing him in, I think, one lineup. I told you were going to be disappointed. It did not help that Tyrod Taylor left the game, and then they were down to their, fourth string QB? Third string QB. Because they didn't have Justin Fields. Obviously, he's not active. He just doesn't want to play for him anymore. Don't really blame him for that. So third string QB in the Jets. Yeah, nothing was going to go right there. But even so, I think you'd have been, even if Tyrod Taylor had gritted through and played this one, I think you would have been disappointed with Adonai Mitchell. Puka Nacua was next, and then Christian Watson. Tyree McLaurin made the top list here of chalk plays, and then Jackson Smith and Jigba rounds it out for the guys that had the most ownership. So that's quite a few names there. And then for the tight ends, we had Kyle Pitts at the very top, and then Colston Loveland not too far behind him, and then Brenton Strange, Tyler Warren, and Dalton Kincaid round us out there. So those are the top owned guys for week 14. And here's the accuracy report. 2 out of 3 of those top owned QBs hit 3x value. Obviously Tyrod Taylor was the one exception, and he left with injury. So that's just kind of a bummer there. 1 out of 5 last week. So QBs were, they went off. Most QBs went off this week. I think, between Josh Allen and Jacoby Brissett, that was represented about like 25% of the field. So 1 in 4 lineups had a QB that was totally fine. No issues there at the very least. 1 out of 8 of the top owned RBs only hit 3x value. So it's 1 out of 8 as opposed to 2 out of 8 last week. RBs have been really tough the last couple of weeks. We have not been on the right RBs as a community, as an entire field. So that was interesting. 4 out of 9 of the top owned wide receivers hit 3x value, compared to 2 out of 14 last week. So wide receivers were good this week. We were on the right ones. Relatively easy to call which ones there. 3 out of 5 of the top owned tight ends hit 3x value. That's compared to 3 out of 8 last week. So that was also easier. The tight ends were more consolidated, and they hit value more often. So 40% of the top 25 picks pictured had 3x value. That's compared to 22.9% last week. Remember, that was the lowest we had seen all season. Yeah, lowest we'd seen all season. And 40%, still not great. My big take at the end of that podcast, or I think after the podcast was over, I really had a kind of a come to Jesus and really thought about it pretty hard. And, identifying the chalk at this point juncture is more difficult because of pricing. Because, we have less clarity on who's actually going to be giving a crap because some teams are out of the playoffs, some teams are in, some players have incentives. You can track that stuff and make some educated guesses, but at the end of the day, you're going to have people that just do not perform. People are banged up. It's week 15 now, week 14, 15. So there's injuries. People are just dealing with nagging injuries at this point. So it's more difficult now to identify the chalk than it was, weeks 1 through 13. And so my epiphany there was I need to really, really lean into being contrarian and going with a different, a lower owned stack. And you'll see what I did in a minute here. But I think that's going to continue to go through the end of the season. Week 18 is going to be funky. There's going to be a lot of crazy stuff going on. So that might be a throwaway. That might be a completely different story. But for the next couple of weeks, at least through week 17, probably, people are jockeying for playoff position and we have a lot of games that matter. I think we're going to need to identify the chalk and try to get off the chalk. And one thing I'm looking at with this slate coming up is it is difficult to find a way to get off the chalk. I am finding it very difficult to find pivots that make a lot of sense. Don't worry, there are some. You will get some information here that will help you and perhaps take down a GPP. I'm hoping that we get one, before the season's over. But either way, we've been successful, and but it is difficult. It is difficult because there's just not a lot of clarity about. There's just not a lot of value this week. That's what I'll say. I'll leave it there. But there are some things I noticed. So it's actually the ownership this week in week 14 was more concentrated than it was in week 13. Actually, I believe there were 35 picks that had the most ownership on that slate, and this one was only 25. So more concentrated ownership here than I actually would have thought coming into it. But as you can see, it didn't necessarily hit at a very high rate. It was only 40%. So we've seen, in the mid 50s. 40% is not bad per se. It's one of the worst ones, though. It looks like it's probably the 5th or 6th worst week in terms of how many of the top owned people hit value. So my chalk calls from last week. We had Josh Allen called as chalk. Yes, of course, he was chalk. Matthew Stafford, no. Matthew Stafford, and this was the guy. I was between playing a Matthew Stafford stack and the second I ended up going with, and I ended up going with the other one for that epiphany reason, because I said, hey, nobody's going to own this stack. I'm feeling it. It worked out for me in the end, but the Stafford stack, that lineup actually ended up doing better. So you'll see that as well. 6.54% owned was what he was. So pretty nice pivot there if you end up getting a Matt Stafford like I did in one of my lineups. Jaden Daniels, no, he was not chalk. He was only 4.98% owned. Crap the bed. The Commanders got absolutely rolled. Did not matter. He was bad. And then he was injured. So he ended up leaving for Mariota in that second half. I believe it was around halftime that he went out. So yeah, that did not work out. Jacoby Brissett, yes, he was chalk. So I missed Tyrod Taylor, and I'm glad I did, because I was not going to play Tyrod Taylor. It was not even on my radar. I don't know why people end up going to him. I guess just as a cost saver. I'm not sure. Devon Achane, yes, he was. James Cook, yes, he was. Josh Jacobs, yes, he was. RG Harvey, yes, chalk. Kinshawn Junkins, yes, chalk. Ashton Jeanty, no, only 4.56% owned. People are off Jeanty. I mean, the skill's clearly there, but the Raiders are so broken. I end up playing Jeanty probably in the lineup or two. But the Raiders are so broken. I can't really bring myself to do it again. I like the talent. I think, the career trajectory will be nice once, he gets on an actual team. But as it stands, I can't bring myself to do that. Puka Nacua, yes. Jamar Chase, yes. Michael Wilson, yes. Terry McLaurin, yes. Christian Watson, yes. Adonai Mitchell, yes. Luther Burden, yes. That's a clean sweep for the wide receivers. I knew where everyone was going to be. As we saw those wide receivers, everyone was on the same people, so it wasn't hard. 4 to 9 of those guys ended up hitting chalk. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys listed here, so I missed 2 of them. But for the most part, I knew where people were going to be. Tyler Warren was chalk. Kyle Pitts was chalk, and Brenton Strange was chalk in terms of the tight ends. So also there were 5 of them, and I got 3 of those correct as well. So all in all, a pretty good week in terms of identifying the chalk. I was just off on the QBs, really. Missing a running back, I'm not really concerned about that. That happens. I mean, usually it's one or two misses between the running backs and the wide receivers, so I'm not too concerned there. But really would have thought Stafford would have been more highly owned, and Daniels with, all of his weapons back. I was pretty high on him. I was really excited, I think around podcast time, Friday night. But then as the weekend wore on and, I came back to – and I just came back and kept thinking about it, kept, working some lineups and getting different combinations in there. I really kind of slowed my roll on him a little bit, which really saved me in the end. So that was good. But I ended up playing one lineup with Jane Daniels and a commander stack. My top plays for the week. Keanshawn Junkins, he was 14.3% owned. So that's, that's what I was looking at. It was not going to be a guy that was going to be super highly owned, but would have a fair amount of ownership. He ended up putting 1.5x value, 9.4 fantasy points, 6.4K salary. If we had a lot of running backs going off, I would have said this was a bad call. All in all, it didn't hurt you. So it was an okay call. It was fine. Luther Burden was 31% owned, but he did put up 2.9x value. 11 fantasy points on 3.8K salary. So, that was a pretty decent, didn't hurt you, didn't really help you that much either. Michael Wilson was 54.4% owned, as I mentioned, so pretty highly owned. 7.2x value, though, 40.2 fantasy points on 5.6K salary. So that was a fantastic call. Everyone knew it. Everyone was on it. If you faded him for whatever reason, it hurt you very badly. So hopefully you guys played him. Colston Loveland, again, 17% owned. 4x value, 12.9 fantasy points, and 3.2K salary. So that was a pretty good call as well. It wasn't a fantastic call, but it was a good call. He ended up catching the touchdown. If you guys do recall, I said that between Colston Loveland and Luther Burden, we were going to get at a floor 21 points. And I was fairly sure, I wasn't going to guarantee it because I want to eat my own words. I was fairly sure we would get a touchdown between those two. It ended up being Loveland that caught the touchdown and not Burden. And as you can see, they combined for 3.9 points. So we got a little bit over the floor I was thinking of there. Key pivots I ended up playing. I did play Sam Darnold. He was only 6.5% owned, but he put 4.2x value, 23.26 fantasy points, 5.5K salary. So that was a good call for sure. Jonathan Taylor, if you recall, that was kind of my headline guy. Now look, Daniel Jones, right, playing on a broken leg, ends up rupturing his Achilles, which is awful. I hate to hear that. Obviously, Daniel Jones was a good story, comeback guy, having a good season. That just killed everything for the offense there. And I'm pretty worried about Jonathan Taylor coming down the stretch here. What's going to happen? I mean, Phillip Rivers, are we kidding ourselves? I said the same thing, though, about Joe Flacco behind that awful Cincinnati Bengals line, and he's played well, but he's also younger than Phillip Rivers. And I don't know. It's really a scary situation. But Jonathan Taylor was 4.4% owned. He put up 1.3x value. Started off hot. He scored a touchdown early in that game, 12.4 fantasy points on 9.3K salary. But then, of course, once the injury happened, the Colts could not move the ball, basically, and everything kind of fell through. So that did not work out. Bijan Robinson was 3.9% owned. He only put up 1.2x value as well, 10.4 fantasy points, 8.5K salary. So, both of those guys did not do anything. And, those are two of the most popular pay. Well, I wouldn't say popular, but those were two pay-ups on the slate that we were looking at as pivots. Jackson Smith-Njigba, 13.8% owned, 3.1x value. He scored 29.1 or 2. I can't remember. I must have screwed this up. Sorry about that, guys. But he scored about 29 fantasy points on 9K salary, which was good. Decent enough. Not gonna win you the game or anything like that. Harold Fannin was another pivot I ended up playing. 5.5% owned, as I mentioned. 7.7x value at 28.4 fantasy points on 3.7K salary. So a couple of 7Xers here, and that'll do, man. That'll do, donkey, for sure. Because if you would have played Michael Wilson and Harold Fannin in a lineup, which we saw, you had a pretty good shot at taking down one of these things. Unfortunately, I did not play those guys in tandem, but nevertheless. The min cash line for the SPY was 148.56. That's compared to 122.84 last week. So came up a little bit. Still relatively low compared to what we've seen this season. But yeah, did definitely come up a little bit, and that's because more of that chalk hit, 40% of the chalk hit, as opposed to 22% last week. So that's the difference right there. I do think these pay lines are going to continue to be relatively low because, as I said, it's just a lot of uncertainty right now. A lot of uncertainty. The pricing is more locked in. There's more value in pivoting, I think. So now more than ever, you want to have a pivot point. The min cash for screen pass was 148.74. So very similar story there. Yeah, again, the chalk is very difficult to follow now as there's just no clear value. You've noticed that ownership is smoothing. So I think I took this word for it literally from the comment I put out there. But we've noticed, and this is the comment on the YouTube page where the video was, I believe, and in the Discord, which you guys should get in the Old Man Squad Discord. But we've noticed that ownership is smoothing out across the field, which amplifies any leverage we can find. So conceptualize, instead of having one guy at 50% ownership, we have 5 guys at 10% ownership. So if you find the 6th guy at 5% ownership, that's even more valuable than if, we have a 50% ownership guy and you find the guy at 10% ownership and they go off. I mean, they're both valuable, don't get me wrong, but since ownership is smoothing out, the leverage that you find with these low-owned plays is amplified. Basically, in the end of the day, all chalk is inherently worse chalk than the chalk we were seeing in weeks 1 through 13. So we want to be more willing to fade the chalk now more than ever. So with that in mind, we'll head into week 15 here. I already mentioned the Burden and Loveland thing. They combined for 22.9 points and a receiving touchdown. Here's my performance, though, personally from last week. So with all that in mind, what I ended up doing in my big contest, the Spy, is I went with a Baltimore Ravens stack. Baltimore Ravens, nobody is thinking that this team, has an offense. Their offense has really struggled. Lamar Jackson looking hobbled, looking like, he can't really run the ball. So I played into that just knowing it's going to be low ownership. So I got Lamar Jackson, Rashad Bateman, and Mark Andrews. The ownership on Lamar was 3.4%, on Bateman 0.5%, and on Mark Andrews 2.3%. Now, Bateman did have a catch around the, I would say, 5-yard line and maybe could have gotten in the end zone. But I believe there was a penalty on the play, so it was called back. And there's no guarantee he would have gotten the end zone. Maybe he's tackled at the 3-yard line or something like that, right? But if he does get that end zone at 0.5%, ownership, that's pretty dang valuable. Mark Andrews was a no-show. He didn't do anything. He got one catch. I believe it was late in the game, too. It was like fourth quarter. He was a 0 up until that point. But what saved me with that stack is that Lamar Jackson did end up using his legs more, and he did end up having a rushing touchdown, 43 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Also put up a passing touchdown. They lost to the Steelers. I really figured that Steelers Baltimore game was also just kind of juicy in terms of, a lot on the line when it came to playoff odds. But what really saved me is that I had a bring back, and it was DK Metcalf. He scored 25 DK points on 5.4K salary. Yeah, he had 148 receiving yards and didn't score a touchdown, unfortunately, so he didn't reach an absolute ceiling there. But yeah, that was pretty good. Josh Jacobs is my running back who had a decent game against the Bears. No problem there at all. Keyshawn Jenkins, as I said before, didn't really hurt you, but also did not help you. But he had 9.4 points. And then I had Puka Nacua in my flex, which really also saved me as well. Almost 39 points from him against that Arizona Cardinals defense. And then the Commanders was my defense. I mean, really, this week more than any, I'm looking to punt defense because I just hate the defense is even part of it, but none of them look really good compared to their pricing. To me, the Commanders looked pretty decent, as you can tell, against that Minnesota team that had really struggled offensively. And J.J. McCarthy coming back. I really didn't believe in him either, but they put up 31 points. So obviously I was wrong. But it was only 2.8K for the Commanders. So they did put up 3 points. So at least they didn't put up negative points. And then here for my screen pass, this is the one I was going to roll out in my Spy, the big one. And if I would have, I probably would have got another, 100, $150, whatever. But I didn't. I went to the Lamar Jackson stack instead. But this one was a Stafford, a Ram stack. It was Stafford, Puka Nacua, and that was it. I just had those two. And for a bring back, obviously, I had Michael Wilson. So between Puka Nacua and Michael Wilson, tons of points, obviously. Matt Stafford ended up having 23.24 DK points. He had 3 passing touchdowns, which was really nice. I also had RG Harvey in this lineup, so that was nice as well. And then Keyshawn Junkins. And then Luther Burden was in this lineup with Colson Loveland. So, they combined for what I thought they would do. Then Josh Jacobs was in there as well, which was nice as well. So, and then the Commanders defense. So, 177.64 was my highest score there. And that was the screen pass lineup. That's still a good 30 points, 30 to 35 points shy, maybe even 40, just about 40 in the screen pass here from taking down that tournament. So definitely wasn't like super duper close. Imagine I put Fannin in here in Loveland, and then wide receiver, I go up to someone else like a JSN or something like that. That's what we're talking about. And we can take down the GPP with that. But alas, I did not do that. But in week 14, I still won $155. That puts me on the season up $410, which is just short of 3 weeks of entries. And we've got 15, 16, 17, 18. We got 4 weeks left of the season. I will be playing in the playoffs, but I'll probably do podcasts, but it'll be less. How do I put this? I will be doing them. But then once it gets down to fewer games and, it's really just showdown slates, I haven't really, because showdowns are difficult because you have to be really contrarian in these large fields to really do anything at all. And it's just a lot of missing. It's just depressing. So I don't really want to do podcasts about it. And like, what am I going to do? A 20-minute podcast about it, something? I don't know. I don't really see a lot of value there. So we'll see. We'll see how I handle that. But I think I will be, as long as there's enough games to have a main slate, I will be doing these podcasts. But yeah, just about it's 2.8 rounds, weeks of entries I have stored up here. So we're sitting pretty for the time being. So that brings us up to week 15. So let us discuss week 15. Like I said, this is a difficult slate. This is probably the most difficult slate I've come across so far this season, where I just felt like I'm not that I'm lost. It's just I'm trying to find ways to get different, and everything is inherently more risky than what I've done previously. So I feel like this is a go big and win, or just lose everything week, which, we've definitely lost everything. Let's see, one. I'm just counting how many weeks here we've lost every single thing. 2, 3, 4. So 4 weeks out of 14, which is not too bad. But let's see, percentage wise, that's I still need a calculator because I'm not that mathy. 29% of the time, 28.6% of the time, we lose everything. So that's very much on the table here. So just so you guys are aware, we're gonna get freaky with it. I'm gonna have to. But I will point out the chalk here, point out where I'm trying to get different. And in order to, we'll wait on some news here. Hopefully some news does break that just opens up some clear value so that there's less points where we have to pivot. I feel most comfortable when I feel like there's 2 or 3 points where I can really pivot and get different from the field. But otherwise, I'm sticking with everybody because, the value is the value. The value is the value for a reason, right? There's something that looks good about the matchup. There's something that looks good about the total. So you do want to try to stick to that sometimes, but other times we want to deviate. And I feel comfortable when it's just a few points where we do that. Here, I feel like you need to. So here's an observation. This slate has 13 games. That's compared to we've had 10 or 11 games on slates because of bye weeks, right? I think there was even maybe one that had like 9 or 8 in there as well. So somewhere between like 9 and 11 games for the past since week 4. So that past 10 weeks, right? We've had that. So what would you think? Is it more beneficial right now for us to stack one game heavily, or do we want to have more one-offs because there's more options with more games? I'm gonna let you think about that. You're wrong. I don't know if you're wrong. You probably are wrong. Because your logic, your first reaction is going to say, there's more choices. So obviously stacking one game is less valuable, or it makes less sense. Because if we pick and choose all these good options from these games, we're going to have a higher score. And, there is some truth in that. I'm not going to just completely disregard that first initial intuitive reaction. But no, you're wrong. We want to stack games. We want to stack games heavily and aggressively, and we want to have bringbacks. More games means more diluted ownership. And I mentioned before, flattening out, smoothing out the ownership, being different and taking, more extreme stands, having leverage is more important. Even more important. So not only is the chalk shaky right now, we also have more options that's going to dilute ownership, that's going to make us look for stronger leverage. So we're going to get freaky. It's going to have to happen. That's making me uncomfortable. It's going to make you uncomfortable, but we're going to do it. Okay, so a couple of notes here before we get started. Weather impacts. The Cleveland at the Browns game, or Cleveland at the Bears game, it's going to be really cold. Yeah, I live in the area. It's going to be really cold. It's going to be like 5 degrees, and with wind chill, it's going to be like negative 20. So, the cold doesn't like necessarily mean that they're going to have a worse game, but we do have to take that into consideration. That's extreme cold, right? Like if it's going to be like 20 degrees or something and feel like 15, not that big of a deal. But negative 20, now you're talking about actually affecting like the physical human, and like this is something you need to be aware of. So if you want to fade this game completely, I do not like that. That's fine. I think that's totally a good call. There's 13 games on the slate. You don't have to play this game. There are some Browns players I do want to play. You probably know them already, but I don't think I'm gonna touch the Bears. Love the Bears. There's a lot on the line for them. I hope they win this game. I think they can win this game, but it's not going to be a high-scoring affair. And we don't know about Rome Odunze. Rome Odunze may play. He may not. If he doesn't, there's one piece of the Bears I do have interest in slightly, but I'm probably not going to have any Bears. I mean, yeah, Colson Loveland would be the piece, and I may not get to him because there's other tight ends that are around the same price that are more safe. So probably not. For the Ravens at the Bengals, it's also going to be very cold in Cincinnati. 14 degrees and wind chills of 0 to 5 degrees. So less cold. It's not negative 20. It's not as impactful, but it is something to keep on our radar. When it comes to stacking games, I mean, we have to find reasons to eliminate these games to stack. I'm probably not going to stack this game. I'll still take pieces from it. Less of an issue taking pieces of this than from the Browns and Bears game, but I'm not going to stack this game most likely. The Bills at the Patriots, also going to be very, very cold. Temperatures below freezing and a 10% chance of snow flurries in the game. So you need to take that in consideration. Not fading this game completely, but, I would downgrade everybody a little bit here. Okay. And the Colts at the Seahawks, probably going to see some rain, and it could be heavy rain. So that would be, a little bit of rain, not a big deal. Heavy downpour during the game. We have to monitor this because with rainstorms, obviously they move, and we have to find their direction. I mean, sometimes we really can't tell if they're going to go and shift direction a little bit and miss the stadium or whatever. So we're going to have to monitor it. But, if that rainstorm does end up going there, this is an interesting game because obviously Phillip Rivers for the Colts, it's a bit first kind of test for the Colts here. to see if they can rebound and make that last playoff push. But I do have interest in this game. I think the Seahawks side especially is very intriguing. But we need to monitor that rain situation. If it doesn't end up, looking like a downpour is going to happen in that game, I'll probably come off of it completely because I want the passing game of the Seahawks, and that's the part of the game that's going to be affected the most. So, but who's going to be the chalk on this slate? Let's talk about that. First at QB, my one and only Mr. Best Ball guy that's been helping me with everything, Matthew Stafford. This Detroit secondary, banged up. Rams, let me see, playoff implications. Doesn't really matter to them. I think they're pretty much in no matter what. Yeah, it doesn't matter to them. Detroit also, Detroit does have some really big implications here. If they win, 72% chance to make the playoffs. If they lose, 40% chance. So big game for the Lions. The Rams are still wanting to win this thing and improve their position. So there's stuff online here. I like it. I like the Matthew Stafford play. Obviously, you can stack him with Puka Nacua. You can stack him with Devontae Adams. You can stack him with Colby Parkinson, who's very interesting as well. Then you're not playing Kyron or Blake Corum, of course, but I do like it. Lamar Jackson, probably going to be chalky. I just mentioned, a little bit of weather in that game. People suddenly want to play the guy I wanted to be contrarian on last week, and it doesn't make me feel good. Still even watching that game, I watched it pretty closely, of course, because I had a lot invested in that. Still doesn't look 100%, right? Still doesn't have that speed that we've seen in previous seasons. As you can see, 3 single-digit games in a row, and then a 16-point game, and then he finally had a pretty decent game last game, and most of that was because of the yards in the ground and the rushing touchdown. Maybe he turns a corner. Obviously, the Bengals are a pretty weak defense to attack, so I get it. But probably not going to be doing that. Jackson Dart. On the Giants is going to be pretty chalky. This is an interesting one. Obviously, this Washington defense has been terrible, right? Washington defense has been awful. So it's a really nice matchup. That's probably the biggest draw here. Kind of a down week last week, but before that, pretty decent showing here. He's got some pretty decent upside. The one thing that kind of concerns me a little bit about Jackson Dart of late is that this rushing upside is not really as high as it was, earlier in the season. They don't want to do as many design runs for him. Obviously Daboll's been fired. They're really just playing for the future now. They don't want to get him concussed and hurt. So, him taking off and just running and barreling into people with his head down isn't really on the table anymore. So that kind of kills it for like a real true ceiling game for me. But it is a good matchup. I didn't really mess with any stacks with Jackson Dart, but it's something I may do later in the weekend if I'm still struggling to find ways to get different, because I don't think he's going to come in like super highly owned. CJ Stroud, I do like this play. 5,200 CJ Stroud. Pricing just hasn't caught up yet. Couple of pretty muted games against a strong Kansas City defense. You would have thought he would have had a pretty decent game against Indianapolis, but he was coming back from injury, so maybe they just wanted to kind of keep him a little bit limited there. Early in the season, he struggled pretty much all season, but he did have a good game against the Baltimore Ravens when they were struggling defensively, if you recall, early in the season. Had a good game against the San Francisco 49ers, who also are not really that great of a defense now with Alfred Warner and stuff. So, but here, up against the Arizona Cardinals, this defense has not been very good either. So it's a nice matchup. I like his pieces, the pieces that go with him in their pricing. I like Nico Collins. I like Jaden Higgins. I really like Christian Kirk. I really like Christian Kirk here. 3,200 for Christian Kirk. I'm just going to whisper his name. But I do like his weapons. He's also got Dalton Schultz at 4,100, who has been lights out this season. when CJ Stroud's been healthy, he's had some really nice ceiling games, 18.8, 18.3, 12.5, right? 11, not really that good, but you get the picture. So I do like Stroud a little bit here. Marcus Mariota, also probably going to be pretty highly owned. And I'm thinking this is probably just a cost-cutting thing, right? People want to save some salary on the QB so I can spend up on the other guys. Because he's only 5K. Really nice matchup against the Giants. I can get behind it for sure. Just, make sure you're spending that salary wisely wherever you're spending it. But there are spend ups on the slate that make sense. Obviously, with a 13-game slate, you can certainly spend up on games. And you can stack this game as well. Like I said, I want to stack. I'm inclined to do that. Stacking Mariota, with Debo and Terry McLaurin makes a lot of sense. Two nice weapons there for him. How motivated are they, though? Being eliminated? I don't know. I do know Debo has some incentives we'll talk about here in a little bit. So I'm okay with it. I think the Marcus Mariota stack can work, and then you can bring it back with the Giants too. Some guys in the Giants project well. You can definitely do Tyrone Tracy, who's going to be healthy for this one. You can also do Wan'Dale Robinson. You can do Slayton, like Slayton in this one too. Theo Johnson. So there's pieces on both sides that are nice here. So that's you can stack that game. That's going to be a pretty popular game to stack, I think. Probably the most popular. Those are the QBs I think are going to be chalky. And moving on to the running backs here. I mean, no doubt, Christian McCaffrey. Going up against Tennessee. Fantastic matchup. I have my hangups on Christian McCaffrey. He has not looked explosive compared to previous seasons, but he's so heavily involved in the offense. There is no doubt about it that he's a very decent play. He's only 9K too. Before he's creeping up in the almost 9,500 range, and now he's come down to 9K again after a kind of quiet showing against Cleveland. Obviously, 49ers, I believe, are 2 touchdown favorites in this one. So, yeah, I can get behind that for sure. A nice pivot off of McCaffrey, and a guy I think is going to be relatively high owned compared to the other running backs on this slate. But he is a nice pivot off of McCaffrey, and I do like him a little bit. I won't say more, but I like him if you're going to use him in that way. If I can find him, there you go, Jahmyr Gibbs. He's 8,800. Gets a tough defense in the Rams, but we've seen his explosive ability. 3 touchdowns last week. A 58 burger against the Giants. 41, almost 40. I mean, man, the ceiling is crazy on this guy. So I can get with him if he's your pivot and you have other safer plays on your roster. I don't know if I can get with him as just like I'm not going to bank on him having one of those giant games. Personally. Another highly owned guy, and he's got this offensive line does have an advantage against his defensive line. Absolutely. But Derrick Henry, right? If you're not going to play Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry makes sense. You could just fade this game entirely, as I mentioned before. But yeah, Derrick Henry makes sense. Getting a little pricey, though. Before when he was like, let's see, what was the week I called him my guy here? Was it week 6? It might have been where he had 17 DK points, or it might have been week 10, maybe 6.8. I'm not sure. But either way, he was pretty cheap, and now he's not as cheap, 7,300. So a little bit of a pause there, but I don't mind it. It's okay. I don't mind ending up on it. A guy like Moore, though, that's similarly priced and also going to be relatively chalky, is Saquon Barkley. I like Saquon Barkley. Obviously, pretty decent game last week against the Chargers. Been very quiet almost all season, but now we get the Raiders. The lowly Raiders that are exactly the medicine that Saquon Barkley needs to cure all of his ills. Yeah. I do like some Saquon Barkley here. I think this is very decent play. I can't get behind this. Ashton Genty supposedly going to be chalky, and I don't know. I really don't believe that. I might just take him off this list. I'm not going to play him either. Philadelphia's pretty stout against running back, so I don't get it. 5,800 is cheap. I get that, but yeah. The other cheap guy that I want to pretty much jam him in all my lineups, and so is everybody else, is Woody Marks. Woody Marks at 5,600. Cheap. The cheapest guy. He's the kind of key to get you to, you want to play McCaffrey, you want to play, Amon-Ra St. Brown, you want to play all these guys that cost $1 million. Maybe I want to play, I don't want to play Michael Wilson, but maybe I want to play, Olave. Maybe I'll play, you get the point. I'll play Chase, right? Difficult to do, play all those guys, but with a guy like Woody Marks, it helps you get there. And there's some other value guys, too, I'll go into that will help you get there as well. Other chalky plays at the wide receiver position. Puka Nacua. I don't know why. Just my brothers. I screw with them. And he was going out injured one game, and my brothers got him in the league or whatever. And so I was just calling him Puka Nacua for no reason. Just stupid, silly stuff you do with your brothers. Puka Nacua, though, despite all workout videos where he's recording people half naked or whatever. I don't know if you guys saw that. But yeah, he obviously a huge game last week. Some quiet games before that, but obviously this guy has a ceiling like none other. And gets a banged up Detroit secondary. Stack him with Matthew Stafford, no problem at all. Jackson Smith-Njigba, do we really need to talk about Jackson Smith-Njigba? No, we know what these guys do. Puka Nacua, Jackson Smith-Njigba, every week they're going to be popular because they're really good. Ja'Marr Chase, don't need to talk about him. He's really good. Amon-Ra St. Brown, don't need to talk about him. He's really good. Ja'Marr, this Baltimore defense has been more stout than they were in the beginning of the season, so maybe not as bullish on him as the rest of the field seems to be. Amon-Ra, yes. Again, Detroit has a lot to play for here. Tough Rams defense, but he seemed to be healthy last week when he came back. And then, like I said, JSN, we have to monitor that rain situation and see what's going on there. So more interesting guys are going to be chalk. Nico Collins. And Nico is at 6,700. And it's a good matchup. I mean, it's against the Arizona Cardinals, so good matchup here. He's been decent all season, basically. A couple of duds here and there, but I can get behind it. It's fine. Not over the moon on it. It's okay. Wan'Dale Robinson, the good thing going for Wan'Dale Robinson is that, like I said, Jackson Dart's not going to do those design runs. He's not going to, put his head down and run 100 times a game. And the Washington Commanders have basically given up on the football season. So there's certainly a case for Wan'Dale Robinson to be chalk. I don't love it, but there's a case there. I can see it. 5,900. That salary is a little, I won't say prohibitive, but a little higher than I'd like it to be for a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson. Because if you look, he's had good matchups before and done swimmingly. I would say this is probably, I don't think our secondary was back yet and intact and didn't really do well against the Bears. Against the Giants. Was that a Jackson Dart game? Was it a Russell Wilson game? Was it a Jameis Winston game? I don't know. Just a lot of uncertainty there, in my opinion. But anyways, moving on. Juwan Jennings supposedly going to be also chalk. I like this even less than Wanda Robinson, honestly. Let's see if we can get through the logic here. People are getting to. It's Tennessee. Maybe that's all it is. Tennessee. Haven't got to pivots yet, but Ricky Pearsall is a pivot off of Juwan Jennings. I think is a fantastic call. I do think the 49ers are going to go up, going to put up some good points. I want to play McCaffrey in my lineup. So, if you're doing that, it's just there's no correlation to play Juwan Jennings. Maybe you want to play Purdy and stack him. Stacking against the Titans, I don't know. I'm not feeling that one. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's what wins it all. But I don't like it. And then tight ends, we'll stay with the same team. George Kittle. Everyone just wants to attack the poor tight ends or the poor Titans. And yeah, I mean, if you want to spend up a tight end, I think he's probably the guy, right? Let's see. I can't justify spending $7,400 on Trey McBride. I don't want to play Brock Bowers at $5,900 against the Philadelphia Eagles. So yeah, Kittle's probably the guy, right? Kelsey I like too, but Kittle I think has a higher ceiling. Inarguably, it's pretty apparent in my opinion. Warren with that, having Phillip Rivers back there against a stout Seattle defense. No. I mean, you know me, I want to spend down at tight end anyways. But if I do spend up, I'd probably go Kittle. So I'm okay with that. Harold Fannin, probably going to be chalk as well. Seems to be the guy for Shedeur Sanders. He's still just 4K up against the Bears. Yeah, I can get behind this. Yep. Again, it's going to be extremely cold there, but I don't think that really affects the tight ends all that much. And then to round out our chalk, well, I'm sorry, we got two more plays here. Mark Andrews also going to be chalk. And this is just going back to, hey, it's the Bengals. Let's play tight ends against the Bengals, which I can't fault you because all season long it has worked. He's 3,900 though. Why? And he did absolutely nothing last week. Nothing the week before, really. Nothing the week before that. And then this is the week he caught. What is the week he caught 2 touchdowns? Right here. So he had a nice little stretch, 3-week stretch here. Other than that, and week 3 was also a bomb. But other than that, he's been absolute crap. Absolute crap. He's been so missing, invisible. But he gets the Bengals, so I can't discount it. It's on the radar. Theo Johnson, another guy that should get a lot of ownership. And, given the price point, it makes sense. I don't think you're hoping for the moon here. He does have a decent game back in week 5, but, against the Commanders, I'm okay with it. I think it's fine. My pivots, though, who are the guys that I'm going to be clicking on that are going to be low owned, not super well high owned? And I will say I tried to make a lineup with this guy. I just could not get it. But look, Josh Allen. I don't like his. The thing is, who do I stack him with? You don't have to. We just saw 2 naked Josh Allen lineups wound up taking down both my contests. But he just went off. There's every week is a new week. There's no rule that says, oh, you didn't, you went off this week, so now you have to be quiet this week. You have to not do as well this week. Nothing says that. Right? Now he has, let's see, 41.8. He followed up with an 11.8. 47.7 followed up with a 10.1. So if the trend holds, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. It's a good defense in New England. That's the one caveat against it. And I can't find a way to stack it. which is what I want to do. So I probably won't play him. But he's in the mix for the MVP. This guy could win MVP. Got to get his team into the playoffs. I think that they're pretty much locked anyways, if I recall. I don't have them on my list here of teams in the bubble, so I'm going to go with that. Yeah, I mean, they've won a lot of games, so they're most likely in the playoffs here. But either way, MVP race still very much up for grabs for Mr. Monsieur Josh Allen. So I do like him as a pivot. My pivot I will play is Sam Darnold. Again, we got to watch that rain. Got to see what's going on there. If there is heavy rain there, I'm not going to be playing Sam Darnold stacks. It's not going to happen if it's heavy rain. But 5,800. Every week, he's on my pivot list because he likes to throw the ball deep. He takes deep shots. And sometimes that ends up in 4 interceptions, 2 interceptions. Sometimes it ends up in 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns. This is the boomer bust QB you want to have in a GPP. And the price point is what makes him more appealing than like a Matthew Stafford, who is also, I wouldn't say boomer, but he's definitely more boom than bust this season, which is why his price point's higher. But they're similar build, right? Similar types of QBs in terms of their production, their ability to put up big numbers. At the running back position, not really getting to him a lot. I'm trying to, but the price point's a little wonky, a little difficult to fit in. But if you can manage it, if something does open up, Travis Etienne, up against the New York Jets. Nice matchup. Been solid all season, basically. All season long. I think he's going to come in very low owned. So I do like that one as well. Keyshawn Jenkins, again, cold, negative degrees. Maybe Shador doesn't want to throw the ball as much. The Bears, secondary getting healthy, showing out, having some pretty decent showings, leading the league in takeaways. Maybe the Cleveland Browns, try to keep the ball, protect the ball, keep it on the ground. 6,300. I still like Keyshawn Jenkins as a play, even after he did me dirty last week. But probably my favorite of the pivots here, a guy a lot of people will have forgotten about because they just came off of a bye, but you run against Buffalo. Travion Henderson could have a big game against his Buffalo Bills defense. Does have to deal with Ramondre, and that's going to scare a lot of people off. Ownership's going to be low. These are pivots. 6,100, a few $100 less than Keyshawn Jenkins. I can work with that. There are not a lot of running backs below. Let's see. If we go Keyshawn Jenkins at 6,300, below him, I don't want to play Breece Hall against Jacksonville. No way. I would play RJ Harvey against the Packers, but probably not a good thing. Omarion Hampton against the Chiefs. Yeah, probably not. Not playing GNT. I already said that. Swift against the Browns. No. Not playing Vidal with Hampton there. Marks is the only one, right? Kenneth Walker. No. Nope. Not doing it. Charbonnet is going to vulture all those touchdowns. I'm not doing it. You can't make me. So there's not a lot of options that are under, Judkins. There's like one that I feel good about. 2. So I do like me some Travion Henderson. At the wide receiver position, I love going back to that Jacksonville squad against the Jets. I love Jacoby Myers. Wide receiver 1 on this Jacksonville team that's been red hot over the last month, winning games. Trevor Lawrence turning a corner. BTJ in the back seat, going, hey, give me the ball. No, we don't want to give you the ball. We're going to give it to Jakobi Meyers, who works over the middle for us because that's what we want to do. That's where Trevor Lawrence wants to throw the ball. So I like Jakobi Meyers a whole lot here. I like Terry McLaurin against the Giants. Wide receiver 1 against a very lackluster defense. Obviously, 0 points last week. Everyone's going to see that. It wasn't Mariota. It was a broken game from the get-go. They tried Jaden Daniels out there, tried to get him to, do stuff, and he was awful. Right? Now they got Mariota out there, who's been very serviceable this season. The last time Mariota started and McLaurin came back, he went 7 catches for 96 yards and a touchdown against a Denver Broncos defense. Against the Broncos. Patrick Surtain there, healthy. Mariota was the QB. McLaurin only played 50% of snaps. 50% of snaps. That will come up. McLaurin's looking nice. I like Debo. Same team. So again, the Mariota stack, that might be what I go with for my, and it's not contrarian. That's not contrarian at all. I'll have to get contrarian elsewhere. Debo's a little bit contrarian. And I think McLaurin's contrarian as well. People want to play Sinat. I don't play Ben Sinat. Don't do it. I don't want to play Ben Sinat. Nope. I don't want to do it. But I will play a double stack of McLaurin and Deebo Samuel. There's no run game here. Chris Rodriguez is the RB1. He banged up. I think he's going to play, though, right? Yeah, he's listed as questionable. I'm pretty sure he's going to play. Bill Krosky-Merritt has been dreadful. Jeremy McNichols is third down back. I mean, there's no run game here. It's been one of their major issues. They like Brian Robinson, and that's been one of their major issues all season. So I do like Debo here as well. And he's also playing for incentives. He's got an incentive here. If he gets 8 more receptions, he's going to make $450,000. If he has 2 more touchdowns, receiving or rushing, he gets $250,000. Money on the line for Mr. Deebo Samuel as well. Mentioned it already, but I'll mention it again since I'm on pivots now and maybe people are skipping around or whatever. But Ricky Pearsall as a pivot off of the more highly owned Juwan Jennings. It's only a $100 difference, but the ownership difference is going to be massive. No one's going to own Ricky Pearsall. And he should be wide receiver 2 against the Titans. So I do like that play quite a bit as well. Another one that no one's going to own, I don't think. It's a 13-game slate. Isaac Tesla. Isaac Tesla just catches touchdowns. And the Detroit Lions just score touchdowns. Tough matchup. It's the Rams. The Lions have no tight ends. They're running out, Brock Wright and who else? Dwelly? Ross Dwelly? I know, Brock Wright's on IR. I'm sorry. There's no Brock Wright. Ross Dwelly, Anthony Ferkser. I don't even know these guys, man. I don't know these guys. So when it comes to, first and goal situations from the, 15, 20-yard line, it's Isaac Tesla time. And there's going to be probably at least a few possessions where that's the situation. I got to look at his anytime touchdown prop because I'm liking it, man. I'm liking it a lot. But then my favorite, I don't even call this, I don't know if it's a pivot. I mean, he's going to be pretty highly owned. He's not going to technically be chalk. He'll probably be like 10 to 15% owned. But there's no T. Higgins. So we got to try to jam in my preseason hero here when I was playing preseason DFS, Mitchell Tinsley. Mitch Tinsley, not Michael. My apologies. Mitch Tinsley, last game without T. Higgins, saw 9 targets. Only caught 2 for 22 yards. He did score a touchdown in week 12. Saw 6 targets there. I do like this guy. Athletic. I like the way he plays. So my issue is I think he's going to be pretty highly owned for a guy that's 3.1K. And there's certainly a floor. 4.2 points. That's not going to cut it for us, right? So I don't know how much Tinsley I ultimately end up with, but I like him a lot to start here. My options are limited. Going with a lot of chalk at the moment. So when I give you my plays, keep that in mind. They're probably, I would say, 75 to 80% likely to change. Tight end pivots. I mentioned him already briefly, but Travis Kelce. This is a must-win for Kansas City to keep their playoff hopes alive at all. And ownership's going to be just super low. And yeah, he dudded last week for sure, but he's been solid all season long. So I like Kelce. Brenton Strange at 4,200. I think he'll be relatively highly owned, but he's not going to be technical chalk. So I'm going to include him as a pivot. I do like this. He had a touchdown last game, and it was called back with I believe a penalty. But he did get into the end zone. And if that would have counted, he would have had a streak of 3 double-digit games in a row. As it stands, he only has 5.7, so ownership would be down a little bit more. It's the Jets. I like Brenton Strange. He's 4,200. There's other tight ends that are cheaper that I like. So I may not end up on him too much, but I'll probably have at least a lineup with him if I can afford him. Depends on what my salary is there, right? What I have left over. For the Bears, if there's no Rome Odunze, I like Colston Loveland. If Rome Odunze does play, then Loveland's out. I can't play Loveland. But again, weather there, but I don't think it affects the running backs and tight ends as much as the wide receivers. And then, while we're on the tight ends against Cincinnati kick, why would you ever play Mark Andrews at 3,900 when Isaiah Likely's right there at 3,400? And at this point in their careers, perhaps the better pass catcher. Let's see. Baltimore needs to win this to maintain a 45% chance to make the playoffs. 45%, that's it. If they lose, it's down to 16%. Big game for them. I think both tight ends might be involved, but this guy's $500 less. That's the way I'm seeing it. And he's going to be lower owned. Makes more sense to play Isaiah Likely, in my opinion. All right. Game stacks. Again, I do think the Washington Giants game is going to be a popular one. I mean, just the pieces in that game are all attractive by themselves. Most popular, so it's probably not going to be the one. I shouldn't say that because right now it looks like the best lineup to put out there with the Mariota stack and some Giants bringbacks. So I do have interest in it, but I want to try to get to some of these other games. I like the Detroit Rams game. I think, again, there's stuff online for both those teams. There's obviously attractive pieces on both those sides. If it was me, I want to stack the passing game of the Rams and then bring back with Amon-Ra St. Brown or Jahmyr Gibbs. You could go Jameson Williams if you really want to. You can go Isaac Tesla. So I like pieces in that, a lot of pieces in that game. So that's a good game to stack. Tennessee, San Francisco. I like this game. I like stacking this game. I think this is going to be maybe one that I really go with. I might even end up putting it in my main lineup. But San Francisco has the lowest pressure rates on the QB in the entire league. That helps Cam Ward. I like Ian Manor. Looks like a decent play as well on this slate. And that's really lacking for value. He's only 3,500. Gunnar Helm still at 2,800. Not that expensive. Down week last week, but before that, producing for that low price point. Chig Okonkwo is back. Well, he played in week 13 and 14, but he's pretty much a non-factor at this point. So I think that Tennessee, and obviously the San Francisco side, we already know. Pearsall's there. We've got obviously Kittle. We've got McCaffrey. We got Juwan Jennings if you really want to. So plenty of options there as well. Green Bay, Denver. Also relatively interesting. For me, it's stacking the Green Bay side. Green Bay's got a lot to play for here. They're going to make the playoffs regardless. It's not really going to affect their. I shouldn't say that. This week is not going to affect their percentage, their chance to make it in as much as other teams. So I don't have them listed here, but they have a chance to take the division from the Bears. Oh, they're motivated to do that. Tough matchup for sure, but you can stack Love with Watson, and then Jaden Reed was heavily involved that last game, so I stack with him, or I wouldn't do Luke Musgrave. You can go Josh Jacobs if you want, and then maybe take a pass catcher or something like that, and then you can bring it back on Denver with Cortland Sutton. You can do Evan Ingram if you want. I like RJ Harvey. So I think that's a good game to stack as well. And then Arizona, Houston, also very attractive. I'm trying to get off of Arizona. I'm trying to get off of Michael Wilson in particular. But it is hard, again, to fade that kind of volume. He's only 6,600, so it's really difficult to do that. And then on the Houston side, you got Stroud, who's a really attractive salary as well at 5,200. And then you can stack him with, obviously, Nico, Higgins, or my guy, Christian Kirk. So there it is. Who are my top plays? Who are the guys I want to play in most of my lineups? I made 25 lineups. Again, I am not confident in these. I think there's a very good chance this changes. But in terms of the lineups I've made already, what I'm getting to most is Matthew Stafford. What I'm getting to most is Christian McCaffrey. What I'm getting to most is Woody Marks. If I can find him. Woody Marks. And what I'm getting to most is Mitch Tinsley. Oops. Hate everything. There we go. Mitch Tinsley. Those are the guys I'm getting to the most right now. If we want to round this out, I always try to do, just to kind of give you an idea. We can start with Puka. Defense, like I said, I just kind of want to punt defense this week. I'm totally fine playing the Raiders against the Eagles. I'm hoping they don't go negative. That's really all I'm hoping for there. Tight end, I'm in love with this theory that it's not, Mark Andrews that everybody wants to play. It's actually Isaiah Likely. So it's a direct leverage pivot off of the field, which is what I want to do. Leaves me 5,600 for my other two spots. I did mention that I do like Jacoby Myers, which gives us a flex option where we can go ahead and pop in Terry McLaurin. Boom. I like it. The only issue here is that we didn't stack as hard as I wanted to. So if we really want to stack that Rams-Detroit game with the Stafford. So, the reason I got Stafford a lot is because a lot of the Stafford stacks that I built end up projecting well. So this isn't really a lineup I'm going to roll out there, but I'm going to go ahead and lock it in anyways. So there you go. lock in my spot in that contest. That's going to do it for us, guys. That is your Week 15 look ahead. Again, it is Friday. A lot will change. My core plays, my strong plays will change. I will be in Discord, and I'll probably try to drop some comments on the YouTube video to let you guys know. Please do follow me on Twitter also at datadrivenoms. And let's get that big win, man. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty here, but a lot of times that works out in our favor, and we'll find those plays, and we'll get to the right guys and take this thing down. Until next time, guys, hey, go get that money.